pace of life left you feeling burned out and empty? Do you want to get your life back? If so, good news, it's possible. Let's talk about it with John Eldridge on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome, etc.
Hey everybody, it is Steve Brown, etc. And technically speaking, it is etc., which is Steve Brown, etc. minus Steve Brown. Dr. Brown is still away on vacation. Just pick the best time possible to go on vacation when there's nowhere to go. But hey, that's on him. It's all good. He'll be here next week, so don't fear, do not despair. We will continue on. We have a great show for you today, but more on that in a second. Our favorite megachurch pastor, Mr. Zach Van Dyke, is here. Welcome, Zach.
Hey, I don't know. Can you call it a mega church when people aren't there? I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe it's even more mega because you've got all these extra people online who can never fit inside the pews. Or
we'll see. Yeah.
We just came off our holiday weekend, so I have to know, Zach, how many times exactly did you watch Hamilton?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask that.
You did.
This morning, I almost completed my 5th viewing of it. So
Excellent. Oh, you got it by heart now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I already did, but
yes, I've got to watch this.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch this thing eventually.
I have no idea what it's about.
I don't know. That was Jinx, our producer. He's working hard in his little drywall booth instead of the little glass booth. And Jinx is my hero. He's so laid back. And if he were any more laid back, I think he would actually be lying down.
Yes, sir. I actually am lying down.
Yes.
I rearranged all the furniture and everything so that I could lay down and it looked like I'm sitting up.
It's working. Our video director is Mr. John Myers, and John is truly a wild at heart kind of guy. He saw a Captain America t-shirt he wanted last week, and he bought it just like that, like a tiger taking down its prey. Just
man,
he sees it, he does it, man. I like it. Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life. George wants me to remind you that if you send enough money to Key Life, we can actually hire a real joke writer. I'm just saying.
We'll be looking for a good deal on that, though.
Yeah. And Kathy Wyatt, of course, is the soft, feminine side of the program. Look for Kathy's new book, Mild at Heart. Make those checks to Key Life Network, P.O. Box 5000, Maitland,
hey,
Florida.
Listen, Matthew,
Ontario.
Matthew, yes. I've been researching, some different recipes and stuff, so that if we ever do get back together in the studio, I can bring something in for everybody. And you'll be pleased to know that yesterday on the internet, we all know how responsible and reliable that is. I found 62 recipes for different kinds of s'mores.
Wow.
Yeah. So
gotta be all of them, right?
Well, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to start working on them.
Nice. Well, speaking of doing our best, we're going to do our best to bring you a great show today, because we have for you one of my favorite authors, Mr. John Eldridge. John is a best-selling author, counselor, and teacher. He serves as president of Ransomed Heart, a ministry devoted to helping people discover the heart of God, recover their own hearts in God's love, and learn to live in God's kingdom. His latest book is called Get Your Life Back: Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad. Welcome, John.
Thanks, guys. Good to be back here with you. I always enjoy this.
Super good. Yeah, it's laid back. We're going to have fun for the next hour or so. It's so interesting. We're going to get into what the book is about, and I want to hear about where that came from. But just the subtitle, maybe you have to make a case for, like, what does it mean to get your life back? And help me understand what that means. But the subtitle, A World Gone Mad, just from right there, you're like, I'm in. I mean, I'm sold. There's no argument here.
And I wrote that before the pandemic.
I know. That's what's got to be so weird, is that you've written this book. It's so timely, and it has landed right at a time where people, two things. One, people have more time away to kind of get into what the book's about, but also there's never been more to be stressed about than what's going on. Why don't you tee it up for us? What's the book about, and where did this start? What was the origin for this?
Well, yeah, it is about the world gone mad and what it does to us. I found myself doing what everybody does, spending way too much time on technology, running way too fast in the pace of life, way too dialed into the news. And it was really beginning to fry me. And I started doing some reading in that, like Steve Carr's book, The Shallows. He almost won the Pulitzer for it, What the Internet's Doing to Our Brains. And I knew it was frying me, but then to discover the data that, no, this actually is frying you, like the diminishment of our attention span and the stress levels, everybody's running on cortisol, and just that sense of, I'm cooked by the world. Well, it happened to me. I got cooked and I didn't like it. I wanted to go get my life back. I never intended to write this book, by the way, honest. It wasn't in the publishing plan. And, but I did go do some things to get a little bit more sanity back in my life and get a healthier way in my day to day. And it was so wonderful. It was so helpful that then I thought, this might be helpful for my friends who read my stuff. So then the book came, but it really came after the process.
That's good stuff. I know, I see like a stressful day. I just want to kind of like relax a little bit, and you kind of find yourself watching, I just watched 2 hours of YouTube and I'm like, it's like eating a bag of Cheetos. It's like, I am no longer hungry, but I'm nothing close to what I would call satisfied.
Exactly.
Particularly with social media. And social media, it's not just like content that's assaulting us. There's really kind of a chemical kind of component to it, right? What's social media's role in this idea of just being burned out and overwhelmed?
Yeah. So among the other things that I do, I've been a Christian therapist for 30 years, and I began to get really troubled at some of the data that was coming in. Now there's an overwhelming body of research that shows direct correlation, 1-to-1 correlation between rising rates of anxiety and depression and people's use of social media. And I'm like, look, we were already fragile human beings before. Like, why are we doing this to ourselves? Because the good news is a lot of this, you could actually opt out. Like we're not talking about incarceration here for most of us. We're not in camps. These are lifestyle choices we've made, gotten sucked into, gotten addicted to. But social media is not only anxiety and depression rise directly with your use of social media, but so does envy. There's like research on the power of envy in social media. And so you're like, why? Don't do that to yourselves. You have a choice. Yeah.
We got to use that choice. I had an experience recently where I knew two couples who had anniversary on the same day. And couple number two had a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more Instagram friendly and ready. And couple one thought they had an okay kind of anniversary until, what? He did what? all of a sudden things kind of went down. That envy, that kind of comparison is just the opposite of happiness, isn't it?
Yeah, it takes away the joy. It really does. And like, why would depression go up with people's use of Instagram? And what? Well, it's everybody else's life looks wonderful. And now, okay, so we got to put this in some context. So I wrote all this data, all this research. This was pre-pandemic. Right. And then we just put this thing on rocket fuel. Like we just stomped on the accelerator. Right. Because everybody is stuck at home. And so now, instead of 4 hours a day on our phones, it's 10 hours a day. And, instead of an hour maybe in the evening on Netflix, it's binging, 4 hours. And, it's Zach doing, just looping
Okay. All right.
Hamilton.
Cool.
You're among friends. Lock the doors, guys.
Cool.
Well,
Yeah,
like we all got stuck.
Yeah.
And so then we were more, and let me add one other piece to this perfect storm. So we live in the midst of a perfect storm, and the perfect storm is designed to fry the human soul. The other piece is the news. Negative messaging has a 20-time greater impact on the human psyche than positive messaging. Okay, so, and everybody knows this, right? You wear a new shirt into the meeting, and 5 people go, "Wow, man, that's a nice shirt. Way to go. You look good." And then the one person goes, "Really? What'd you pick that for?" And what do you remember?
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah. So everybody knows this.
In his comment.
Everybody knows this. But the thing is during the pandemic now, daily, negative messaging, here's the body count, here's, and then we add in the racial tension, here's the latest violence, here's the latest, and that is frying the human soul with more levels of anxiety and depression and fear and that sort of thing. So what we're talking about today is a perfect storm that's really designed, it's going to cook us.
It is going to cook us. But I know I don't have to make the case that what John is talking about is true. The question is, what do we do about it? That is the body of the book that we are talking about. Get Your Life Back, Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad. Good stuff ahead. Do not miss out. We'll see you on the other side of the break. Back. This is Steve Brown, etc. Today, etc. Since Steve is gone, he will return soon. We are hanging out with John Eldridge, and his new book is called Get Your Life Back, Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad. In the last segment, we had talked about how the timeliness of this thing is just so very interesting. But I have to tell you, where it intersected with my life was also very interesting because I was as busy and over obligated at that time early this year as I have probably ever been, to the point where it's like 1:00 in the morning and I'm barely getting the stuff done. I'm like, God, if you could not, if you could take some of this away, that would be great. And failing that, if I could get hit by a city bus, not fatal, just a little couple days recuperation in the hospital might be, worth it just to get a little breathing room. But what I read in the book really changed things. And I know it's going to for you guys as well. As a way of springboarding into that, John, you talk about something called benevolent detachment. It sounds fancy. What is that?
Yeah, benevolent, because I don't want people to think you do it because you're ticked, you do it because you're checked out, you do it because you're cynical, but you do need to let it all go. Like we were talking about the negative messaging and how it affects the human psyche. We're talking about way too much news content. Like we were over plugged in before the pandemic. And now everybody, you get up in the morning, the first thing you do is reach for your phone. And what's the news? What's going, has the governor changed the restrictions? What's happening in Italy? What's the, body count in Paris? Right? I mean, it's nuts. The British anthropologist Robin Dunbar did a fascinating study of the size of the human brain and the size of global villages down through human history. And he said that human beings are made to handle the heartaches, the news, the joys, the triumph, of a group of people, about 150 people. But we've all bought into this idea. And I'd love to hear Zach's thoughts on this as a pastor, because we bought in this idea as a concerned Christian, as a responsible human being. You are supposed to know about the suffering of the world. And I'm here as a therapist to tell you that is madness. Like you were never meant to know that the fires in Australia last winter killed 1.9 billion animals. Like that's just not. And so we're living in a time of like massive information overload, compassion fatigue, empathy fatigue. And frankly, let's be honest, the violence, the blow up around the world right now is because the human soul got fried through the quarantine and people are popping. Okay, so benevolent detachment, the quick idea is this. 1 Peter 5:17, cast everything upon God because he cares for you. You actually are not meant to carry any of this. So a couple times a day, I just implemented a practice. And for me, one of the times is bedtime. I just say, Jesus, I give it all to you. I give you my kids. I give you the pandemic. I give you the news. I give you the world. I give you the future of our work. I give you my own financial future. I can't carry it. I got to let it go. Benevolent, it's something I'm doing out of kindness. Detachment, because you got to peel off this Velcro and get the whole sticky mess off of you at least once a day.
Man, I needed to just hear that. I feel like, what's being required a lot now of pastors is knowing every heartache, knowing every injustice that's happening in the world. And if on Sunday you fail to address it correctly, you're in so much trouble. And until you put words to it just like that, I didn't realize I've been carrying around so much anxiety and tension over not just caring about the things that are happening, but making sure I communicate that care correctly. And I think part of even being so connected on social media is now we know how every single one of our friends feels about everything that's happening. And that's not good for my heart. Well, along those lines, John, your book, Waking the Dead, I know I'm going back to an old one. That one really changed my life. So thank you for writing that book. I was in a real dark place and I was babysitting some kids and their parents had that book sitting on their table and I started reading it and I think it's one of the reasons that headed me on the pastorate. So I also am kind of mad at you too, but
sorry about that part.
But the core message of that book, right, is that we were designed to be fully alive and fully human. So I'm wondering how this detachment actually helps us be more human, even though we know less about what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does, because everybody knows this. When you're tapped out, when you're dry, when you're done, when you're fried, you don't love very well. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not a fun person to be around. You're not a good friend. You're not a good spouse. You're not a good parent. Like, when your personal resources are completely tapped out, you don't love well. Mm-hmm. And so this is actually a movement towards love. Yeah, I've got to let it all go. I've got to recognize the limits of my humanity each day so that this stuff doesn't crush me. Mm. And so that I can love, so then I can, be present to the people that are actually in the room with me. Yeah.
You know what I love about this is all the things you mentioned as worries and concerns and things that you want to help with. There's a time to pray for those, right? And you do bring up the specifics, but what you're saying here is a different kind of thing, which is, having said all those things, having done everything I can at this point right now, I give this to you, and you name every single thing. And that kind of relates to kind of this idea of taking a minute or so throughout the day. And maybe that's something we could talk about more on the other side, but maybe can you just tee that up for us as far as what that is?
Yeah. Here's where all this began for me. I would come to Christ in a time of prayer, my taxes, my kids, a conference, something going on in my world. And he would say, John, give everyone and everything to me. And I go, oh, yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yes. Okay. So what we were talking about was this conference that and he would just repeat it. He'd say, John, give everyone and everything to me. He literally kept this up for more than a year. And I realized the reason is because I wasn't doing it. I'd pray about it, but then I'd carry it and I'd obsess it and I'd think on it. Right. And that that took me into the 1 minute.
Excellent. And we will talk about that on the other side of the break. I have definitely been there. You're overwhelmed with everything. I clearly remember a time where I was praying and I was like, God, when are you going to take these things from me? And I heard a voice going, the minute you give it to me, you ain't taking your hands off it.
Let go.
I'm not going to pull it out of your hands, Ace.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about on the other side more from Get Your Life Back, Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad. New book from John Eldridge, important book. We got to get this right because like John said, if we don't take care of our souls, there's not going to be much left of us to help other people. And we will return on the other side. You are listening to Steve Brown, etc., or as it is this week, etc. We'll see you soon. Welcome back to Steve Brown, etc. We're hanging out with John Eldredge, author of Get Your Life Back, Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad. Find more from John at ransomedheart.com and on the Twitters at ransomedheart.
John, talking about the 1 minute pause that you describe in your book and the value of that for you and so forth. Maybe you could elaborate a little more on that. And then you have developed an app that seems to have been extremely timely given the COVID crisis. If you could talk about that as well.
It's a wild story because obviously we had no idea this was coming, but God did. And we built this app back in the fall. We tested it over the winter. We released it in January. And it's built around the idea, the Hebrew word for Sabbath, as you Bible guys know, is Shabbat. And Shabbat does actually not mean rest. It means cease. It means stop. Just stop for a second, for crying out loud. Just cease this endless activity. And what I realized for me was I never stop in my day. I love to go. I love people. I love excitement. I love projects. And so I just go and I get up in the morning and I go, and then I get home and collapse and get up tomorrow and do it again. Jesus said, John, I just want you to learn to pause in your day. Just stop. 60 seconds is all I'm asking for. Now, here's the crazy thing. Here's how jacked our world is. You actually have to convince people that 60 seconds is doable, right? I'm not talking about a week off. I'm not talking about a 7-day fast. I'm talking about 60 seconds of your life. Okay, so where it began for me was end of the day, pull in the driveway. And I don't need to jump out of my car. I can turn the engine off. I lay my head down on my steering wheel usually because I'm fried from the day. And this is where I practice the benevolent detachment. I take 60 seconds and I just let it go. And this became so life-giving. I realized I don't pause between phone calls. I just go phone call to phone call, email to email, text to text, boom, 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 boom. And this is what we consider to be a normal human life, by the way. So 60 seconds, the 1 minute pause. We built an app to help people practice it. And like I said, we tested it in January, it came out, and then the pandemic hits. We have had 90,000 downloads of this app. And on the app, there's a 1 minute pause, there's a 3 minute pause, there's a 5 minute, and there's actually a 10-minute pause. And I thought, oh no, nobody's ever going to use a 10-minute. I mean, that's like asking, people to become monastic. Like,
Right.
There's just no way in this world during the pandemic, the 10-minute pause is the second most used feature on the app next to the 1 minute. Like people found it as it's a lifeline. It's a rescue. You just stop the madness for a moment and get your soul back.
It's, I like to use, and something I got from Steve Brown, in fact, kind of some metaphorical imagining associated with prayer. And one of the things that I think of every once in a while is that story of the woman who had the flow of blood for 12 years, was desperately ill. And she had just the briefest little contact with Jesus, just, right at the edge. And the power came through that. All the power she needed was just in a very brief little encounter. That kind of reminded me of your 1 minute pause idea that, you can do a lot in a minute. And when it comes to God.
That's really beautiful. I'd never thought of that story, George, but you're right. It was a touch. It was a moment. It was an encounter. And the beautiful thing about learning to pause for a moment, a couple times a day, just learn to pause for a moment. As you do this over time, the collective fruit of it is so restoring. It's Psalm 23. He restores my soul. Like God really, he understands the perfect storm we're living in. He knows the madness. And he also knows that most of us don't have, 2 hours a day to devote to prayer. So he will meet you if you pause. Like that woman, he'll meet you. He's kind. He's gracious.
Yeah. In the presence of my enemies, right? Like not after the enemies are gone, I'm going to do all this stuff. It's like right there. It's like, you guys wait. God's got something for me.
Okay. That's a big idea. I'm just going to give a quick teaser for that.
Yeah.
That is a big idea because right now, during the pandemic, everybody's making an agreement with, well, I can't get a vacation. I can't get away. I can't rest. I can't, right? We're all making these agreements of, well, joy is over, hope is over, life is over. And go, no. Like in the presence of the madness, he prepares a table for us.
And what does a table mean? Food. And what does food do? It restores us. Restaurant is from a French word meaning restore. So I think God knew what he was doing when he was writing those lines through David, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that actually gets to something maybe we could talk about on the other side of the break, which is a revolutionary idea where you talk about the difference between relief and restoration. That threw me back in my chair.
It's your bag of Cheetos, man.
Oh my gosh. I am like, okay, whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Eldridge, you got my number again. You did it. We'll find out on the other side of the break what we're talking about between that relief versus restoration dynamic. You are listening to Steve Brown, etc. You better come back. Thanks for hanging out with us. This is Steve Brown, etc. Hey, by the way, if you haven't done so already, make sure you get our free weekly email. It's kind of a big deal. It's awesome. We take the best of what we put on keylife.org and we send it to you just about every week. Sometimes there's some free stuff. Sometimes there's an early look at a video or something like that. Go to keylife.org/subscribe to get in on that. We are talking to John Eldredge, the author of Get Your Life Back, Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad. I hope by now we've not only connected with you of going, this is a problem. I hope we've gone to that second stage where you go, okay, there's some hope here. And in fact, my problem is kind of pointing towards the solution. And I remember when I was reading through this book the first time, and John, you came across something talking about contrasting relief, which is what we reach for, which is much, just need a little relief, versus the idea of restoration. And as we said on the front side of the break, that just floored me. And I knew that I had come across something that was going to change the game a bit. Talk to us about what you mean by relief versus restoration.
Yeah, and let me first say again, friends, as a therapist, somebody needs to tell you this, dear ones. Your life is traumatizing. It actually is. To the bombardment of the negative messaging, to be locked in on quarantine, to have constant uncertainty. When will this end? We don't know. What will the economy do? We don't know. What's going to happen with the racial reconciliation? We don't know. Right? How many people are going to die? We don't know. Is there going to be vaccines? Okay. So you can't do this to human beings without the effect being trauma. And so what I'm encouraging us to all think about is soul care. How do we restore our souls? Because the instant thing for most of us is we go for relief. It's the bag of Cheetos. It's the 6-pack of beer. It's 5 showings of Hamilton. Sorry, Zach.
It's okay.
It's all that stuff we do that, like, I am fried. My soul is crying out for some. Just let me binge on YouTube for a while. Just let me have that third glass of wine I shouldn't have. Let me, it's too much chocolate. It's whatever it is for each of us, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing about relief versus restoration is when it's over, you're not better. Mm-hmm. You were talking about the bag of Cheetos, like I'm full, but I'm not nourished, right? And for me, my go-tos during the pandemic have been dark chocolate and red wine. And they have their place. But like too much of it, and I just feel yucky. I don't feel good, and it's not addressing the trauma of my soul. So the contrast is restoration. And just look at what people do for vacation. Look at what you like to do for vacation. People go to the lake. They go to the cabin. They want to get on water. They go sailing. They ride bikes in Italy. We do restorative things, right? We're going to get to beauty in a moment, but we go to beautiful places so that our soul may be restored. And I just want folks to think about, okay, how much of my life right now is relief and how much is restoration? What can I do to begin to turn away from the quick bag of Cheetos, 6-pack of beer, 3 hours on Netflix, and do things that restore the soul? Because it doesn't take much. There's phenomenal research coming out. A 20-minute walk, 20-minute walk restores the soul. It reduces the cortisol levels in your brain, in your body, and it that kind of thing. Listening to beautiful music, right? Sitting in your garden, the sound of water, the sound of songbirds. Like there are very simple things. You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to get to Hawaii. Like we can make some choices every day to do things that are restoring our soul in the midst of this chaos.
Mm-hmm. Powerful.
I did buy a bird feeder during this, and I can't tell y'all how
you got to hear this
out my window at that bird feeder. But the other night I came out and turned on the light, and there were a ton of rats in the bird feeder. So.
And
maybe they want beauty,
right? It's so metaphorical, right.
Maybe you should have
had cayenne pepper.
Right.
Oh,
yeah, and I think you already touched on it, but I was going to ask because about the issue of when you talk about restoration, you did bring up the restoring power of beauty, and what exactly? And I was interested in that. What exactly do you mean by that?
So here's a cool thing. People in hospitals recover sooner, are released sooner. They need less pain medication if they simply have a window that looks on nature. Isn't that fascinating? Like God knew that the world was going to be traumatizing to the human soul. He knew that, and the body, and the spirit. He knew that. And so he saturated the world with beauty, because beauty heals the soul. Beauty restores the soul. You go to Psalm 23, he restores my soul. Well, where did God do that for David? It was meadow and stream. It was the beauty of wildflowers. It was the sound of a brook. And this is so extraordinary. If I could just recommend 2 things that your listeners do, of all the stuff in the book, it would be benevolent detachment. It would be a couple times a day. You just got to go, okay, I give it all back, God. Like I truly, honestly let it go. I can't fix the world. I can't fix my kids. I just give it back. And the second thing would be beauty. Because of the constant assault, because of the media news, because of the traumatizing nature of the world we live in right now, you must get beauty back into your life. And again, it's cheap, it's free. It's sunlight coming through the window in the kitchen in the morning in your cup of coffee. It's Zach listening to the songbirds, right? And putting a feeder out. It is sitting on your porch in the evening and just letting the cool breeze blow. Very simple choices to get beauty back into your world and let it heal your soul.
That is so powerful and simple and within reach. And really, that's the premise of the whole book. Like you said, we've kind of just touched on two of those, but that's the bulk of the book are just a handful of simple practices that you can incorporate into everyday life to start restoring your soul and finding your way back.
Exactly. Yeah. One more simple thing, folks, is get off the news. Get off the news. It's frying you.
I know it is for me.
You can't do anything about it.
So rough. John, that is good stuff. Again, we have just scratched the surface of what is in this book. If you've been listening this whole hour, you guys, I don't have to sell you on the problem, but I hope you're starting to see what the answer is. It's God. It's these little moments. It's not looking for some grand, elaborate kind of thing. It's taking a tiny moment to find the restoration that God offers instead of the cheap substitute of relief, which I personally find myself reaching for quite often. And it's a missed opportunity. God wants us to give us a lot more. John, thank you so much for joining us.
I love you guys. I love your show.
Thank you so much. Get the book, guys. Read it, share it, get a little group together. You're going to love it. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back. You are listening to Steve Brown, etc. Thank you for spending this hour with us. And speaking of spending, next time you are buying something on Amazon, you can help Key Life at the same time at no extra cost to you. Just go to keylife.org/Amazon Smile to get those details. How good was that hour with John Eldredge? That was awesome. And it was a joy to talk to him. I know, Zach, you had the Waking the Dead book that connected with you. The one for me was the original, was Wild at Heart. It's come out next year will be 20 years.
Wow.
That book has been out. It affected me so much at that time in my life. I was getting married and I bought a copy for all of my groomsmen and all of our ushers, which was great for two reasons. One, I knew that I was being able to impart to them a really great, authentic, biblical vision of manhood. And I was only about $20 a guy, which is great. Yeah. That's really the larger get was that I skated through by seeming coming off as being super spiritual, which is great.
I suspect that's the reason why they're doing this, around the globe, look at the video thing and looking at it because it's the 20th anniversary, and they're looking for an opportunity to show how the book has been really significant.
It's worth revisiting,
which is really, really cool. Yeah. I think it definitely, when that comes out, I think we definitely would want to have him back.
Yeah, it changed. I think it changed the conversation around that topic. Kathy, who will be our guest for next week?
Well, we're starting to crawl out from under the pandemic. And we're actually finding out that there are people out there and books being released. And our friend Justin Holcomb, who works with us and helps so much on the internet, et cetera, recommended that we contact Dr. Harold Senkbeil. And he has a book called The Care of Souls, which is not a new book. It actually, I believe, was released in 2018. But he said and I always listen to what Justin says. So he said that it was really good. And so we'll look forward to doing that next week.
That'd be great. Care of Souls. That feels
Care of
like,
Souls.
A good follow-up.
Good follow-up.
Extension of this conversation.
And Steve will be back next week?
Steve will be back. He actually did show his face here today for a couple of minutes. He said he needed to get away from the house because everything was falling apart at the house. So he came here. I said, so you're going to come here and everything is going to fall apart here. But
Right.
yeah. Anyway.
Like the Key Life, that just Zen center of calmness. And
Yeah, exactly.
well, guys, thank you so much for hanging out, and thank all of you guys again for making this another great show. Great topic, guys. I do hope you'll check out that book. Not kidding. It really is going to give you something to think about. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Same time, same place. Hope you will join us then. Until then, stay safe, stay dangerous.